It's the 2nd of October, 2024, and this is the Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report, where you get the real story behind world events, real history from the highest security clearance in the world. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so the deep state secret space program operatives we call CyberLife took the bait. Want to know what that means? I've been playing a little game with some of these people, I have to admit. So whatever is left of the Alpha system still has access to the Omega backbone system. And I know that I keep talking about there's a new moon, there's a full moon, there's an alignment, and now they all think they're getting paid. Well, there might be a reason for that. I'm just saying. So what I mean by take the bait, what we actually did a few weeks ago is we replicated the key intelligence and military system and the key integrated monetary system and a few other systems that we created and then recreated in the Golden Age AI. And we may have inserted them into Omega, but to do the reverse. Now, they've been salivating over these things for weeks, and maybe they got a little bit of a small amount of access to them yesterday. They may have gotten a hold of some security codes that allow them to get some limited access in the last 48 hours to that system. Now, part of the reason for that is because of what is going on in the Middle East. It appears once they figured out, based on Monday's report, that there is no actual funding coming from Alexander Soros. They may have been very angry, and they were threatening a lot of people and threatening to kill a lot more people. So we may have allowed them that access for a short period of time with the enforcer and ourselves in tow to ensure that there was minimal loss of life, meaning we had enforcement units in the sky and on the ground there right about the time that they were issued the access code so that they wouldn't get too far. So what you're seeing in the mainstream news and, of course, all over social media is that Iran now attacked Israel. Israel is basically saying they're going to blow up the entire Middle East, which is not even possible, nor would they survive. They are a small country, and compared to all of the countries in the Middle East, they are not properly armed. Fake Biden basically says that he gave the U.S. military, apparently my middle name is Kimberly U.S. military Gogan at this point, because he alleges that he sent the U.S. military to intercept all 400 missiles that were fired. I don't know. That is not my middle name, and neither did the U.S. military intercept anything. They were fully well aware of what was going on, at least at the highest levels of generals. They would never have told the U.S. military to intercept anything that CyberLife was doing. This was a cooperative effort. So we ended up finding our lovely CyberLife military folks underneath the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem. That's where they were hiding out. They tried to access the Omega port there, which all of a sudden may have opened. And maybe they figured out at that point the true power of a real full access key intelligence and military system. Maybe they saw all their efforts kind of fall on deaf ears. The only thing that we couldn't really control was the media campaign that they started putting out everywhere. They were actually speaking, in some cases, with CGIs, which is a computer-generated image, over mainstream lines, basically threatening each other, playing all sides. They were actually the ones that launched the 400 missiles from Iran. Iran knew nothing about it, and everybody is in a full-on panic. Back channels started lighting up everywhere, asking who's bombing who, and this is not in the handbook, and this is not in the story. I thought we weren't doing this until we got paid. I thought it was next Tuesday or whatever day ending in Y. That would be, I think, today, since it's a new moon. It's always a payday. Of course, no one quite knew what was going on. That includes Israel, that includes Iran, that includes the Lebanon, that includes Hezbollah, Hamas, Syria. You know, a lot of this information that was put out there was pretty much, I would say, for about 75 to 80% of it was them talking to themselves. Even some of the TV things you see aren't real. So, you know, we may have continued on doing a few more things as Omega dies. And this is part of a defense AI system I installed into the Golden Age AI on my behalf, but on our behalf, I should say. So the system may have even created fake demons for them to talk to on computer screens or holographic phones. Maybe we created fake alien races to have chit chats and tell them when the next place they were going to see a potential QFS, as they call it, or a monetary system. Maybe we've been the one that has been dangling said carrots in front of their faces. You know, you never know. But it did keep them busy for a long time. And, you know, with everything going on in the world right now, it was kind of time for the jig to be up. So they probably can expect they're not going to get any more phone calls from fake demons. And yeah, probably not so much so. But they did take the honeypots and they did take the cyber bait, and they've been hacking ever since at basically a non-existent system. There were many replicas of the system. We did 9 of one, 7 of another. We labeled them their favorite alien friends, such as Artemis and other names, a couple under Marduk, a few Abraxas systems, and they fell for every single one. Oh, so sad. Anyway, yeah, they tried desperately, and I mean desperately, to integrate these systems into their human-computer networks, meaning they wanted that to be the new financial system. They wanted that to take over telecommunications. They wanted that to take over their military and intelligence systems, but alas, nope. They just disappeared like a mirage in the desert, looking for a drink of water, and all they got was sand. Well, God bless them. Okay, on to the next part of our news. Let's talk about these port strikes for a minute. And I know I addressed it briefly in the news, more of a mainstream kind of level, but let's take a deeper dive into these port strikes. So I'm going to tell you a little story. So during World War II, one of the things that the Russians had done to the Nazi Germans was to cut off their supply chains in the dead of winter. What does that mean? Okay, the Germans were rapidly approaching Moscow. They didn't get that far. However, part of the reason why they didn't is because, number one, it's really cold in Russia during the winter. Temperatures are freezing. There is no food out there. There's nothing but snow. So they basically cut off all their supply chains, meaning all their ammo that was supposed to come in, tanks, all their routes. They destroyed roads. They made sure that they could not get to the main city that they were looking to, which was Moscow at the time. So a really good strategy, because eventually most of the Germans died or retreated. And pretty much that is what ended up ending World War II, at least in the theater sense, if you know what I mean, because all wars are theater. Okay, so let's talk about these port strikes. Apparently, they have learned a thing or two about the Russians, or is this just part of what the Russians were talking about at the UN meeting, meaning they were calling the Americans in the USA terrorists? Were they trying to orchestrate or help China obtain control or the world power seat? Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. I know that they've been promised by China and, of course, all of the other members of BRICS that they are also going to be in partial control. I also know that they have cut deals. I also know they've been heavily supporting Iran in what's going on in the Middle East. But are they really going to get what they say they're going to get, meaning the Asian deep state? Are they going to give the Russians that much control? Honestly, if you're asking my opinion, no. They're not going to give the Russians that much control. Why? Because Russia has more advanced technology, military strategies, and a lot of different things that the Chinese simply do not have, nor have they been able to steal. That being said, Russia is a threat even to China, especially since the two countries border each other. It has been over 300,000 years since the Russians or the Rus people of the day were fighting against the Kalima. And the Great Wall of China is built in the reverse, meaning the towers are trying to force out China, not keep China in. So who was monitoring who, and is our history real there? Absolutely not. But no, I do not believe that they'll actually give Russia as much control as they say they do. But, you know, who am I to say? Of course, they're going to believe them, and then they're going to end up in you know what when push comes to shove. And if they do actually successfully launch a counterbalance to the dollar, which is probably never going to happen. I know that's never going to happen. And it's not because of the dollar, but there's a better way to do things. We don't have to crash countries to create a multipolar world, but that is not what BRICS is looking to do. So we'll leave that at that. Now, let's talk about these port strikes, meaning there's not strikes on U.S. ports, but there are no workers currently at U.S. ports. Now, the little company USMX, also called the United States Maritime Association, controls almost all of the ports on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. And I didn't say this in the regular news report. Obviously, it's a little bit deeper than that. But that is the CIA, my friends. The CIA is the one that runs that company. And now the generals of Langley 5 are the ones that control the CIA. So therefore, this port strike has been orchestrated probably well over a week or two ago. This is all in accordance with the plan for global martial law. That has not changed. The terminate the entire United States and turn power over to China plan, yeah, that's what they're doing. And you know what? Even the deep state generals think that they're going to install martial law and they're going to be in control. Quote unquote, they would become your new president at that point in time of the United States. And then, of course, they would be in control of everything, thinking that, you know, they are qualified to do so. Well, they don't even understand how AI systems work. They do not understand the financial system of the planet, because otherwise they would understand what money is real and what money is not real and why it can't go into the system. I don't know who's advising them of this information. In part, it might be me. I don't know. And they just keep running around in circles. They seem to like circles, so we thought we would help them run around in circles. Now, recently, one thing that came out as well is the Q team has put out a report or a new message on the Q clock, which basically says that we will have martial law by tomorrow afternoon, Eastern Standard Time at noon, that the United States government will officially shut down. You remember a world situation report that I had done maybe within about the last week or two, where I said things like, wow, it would be devastating if the government shut down. We would have total chaos. There would be a lot of turmoil that would happen should the U.S. government shut down. Well, is that true or is it not true? Well, I don't think it's true. And I'm going to tell you why I don't think that's true. During the recent Hurricane Helen, we have been observing quite a bit what's going on in Tennessee and Florida and the Carolinas, in Georgia. But we're trying to monitor the situation a little bit to see, you know, we didn't create it, obviously, but we're watching. And what appears to be happening is the same thing that coincidentally has happened in every single hurricane, natural disaster, you know, since the beginning of natural disasters, real or not real, meaning real or orchestrated. And what happens is people show up, such as the Orange Man, and they dance for cameras for a little while, and then they go home. In other cases, FEMA or emergency services, and this is every country, this just isn't the US, they would show up, do the same thing, keep the cameras rolling, whether it's the military in one area, National Guard, or otherwise, or whatever it's called in your country, just like they did in Australia during the floods a couple years ago. And they would show this big orchestration, and then what ends up happening is the same thing that happens all the time. The people, as much as they label us, as much as we don't get along, as much as sometimes you think there's no hope for the world when you get into an argument with somebody at a store, they cut you off while you're driving or something like that, the people always show up. You show up for each other. Even neighbors that you've been fighting with over the lawn or a tree that's hanging over in your yard or something even more prolific than that. You show up for each other. You show up for your animals. You show up with food and supplies, big trucks. Churches get involved. Organizations, local community organizations get involved. And there's always a supply. Could, if this continued on throughout the holiday season, so to speak, could we have a shortage of Christmas gifts this year? Well, if you're talking about the kind that you wrap up with a big bow and put underneath your Christmas tree, or give away at Hanukkah or whichever holiday you may celebrate or not celebrate, possibly. Do I think it's going to last that long? No. I'll tell you why in a second. But the greatest gift we have is each other, honestly. And together we can survive anything. Did I think when I said that out loud that the people would actually let other people fall? That if we had no food or no supplies, do I think the farmers would have come to the table? Or those that can for supplies, or maybe others that have prepped and have a lot of food in their, basement or shelter, Do I think that everybody wouldn't be sharing with everybody to make sure that their communities survive? No. Do I think? Of course they will. The veterans, patriots, do I think they're going to be focused on a selection of orange people or otherwise at that point? No, I don't. Do I think they're going to defend the weak, the innocent, the children in their area? I do. Actually, I think the same about biker gangs and mafia organizations, believe it or not. They're going to support their families. Do they have stock of things that fall off trucks? Sure they do. And you know what? I'll bet you any amount of money they're going to be willing to sell them to you if you feel like putting something underneath your Christmas tree. Do I think that this supply chain issue is going to affect the American people? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that I'm going to go with the principle of there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. Meaning, if we do have issues like this, I think that more Americans will band together. I really do. I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to watch the deep state die. Now, their plan, of course, is to cut supply chains and, cause issues within the United States, of course. And then, of course, I will be upset and sad that people aren't going to get Social Security, or people are not going to get, food subsidies that are offered by the government, or even medical care offered by the government. But again, they're wrong. I know which financial services parties handle all of those things, and I can fund them directly and just go right around the government. They're under the impression that we need a government. And in reality, what we need is each other. It doesn't matter what they do. Now, other things they talked about was cutting off all the pipelines from Alberta, Keystone pipelines, and other pipelines coming in from or through Canada, Alaska, and other areas of the country. That would mean an extremely high price of petrol in the United States. It could go up to $7 to $8 a gallon, even of gas, which is pretty much what the rest of the world pays. Now, if this were the case and we had no government, then there would be no one to enforce, and I'm going to say this again, there would be no one to enforce the farmers that get discounted fuel, even though it has a dye in it, and they check to make sure you're not putting it in your road vehicles, and you're only using it for your tractors and other things on your farm. But since there would be no government to enforce said issue, I am sure that there are many farmers around the United States that have a lot of supplies. Next, a lot of these companies are not big companies that pump oil and gas in the United States. They're smaller companies. They're not run by Halliburton. They're not run by the Seven Sisters, also known as the Rothschild dynasty. I'm sorry, not Rothschild, the Rockefeller. There we go. There's the R word I'm looking for. The Rockefeller dynasty, meaning they still own all 7 major oil companies, but now they're under different umbrellas after the Monopoly Acts were passed many years ago. So there are plenty of smaller suppliers out there. There are plenty of independent petrol stations. I can tell you right now that we, the people, could make this work until we can develop our own. We can put in additives that I know many scientists have to turn that, $10 or 10 gallons or 20 gallons, to go a couple hundred miles or whatever it is in your vehicle. They can double that. So, there's a lot of stuff that we can do, and I'm not concerned about it basically in the least. And I'm not because of you, the people. That's why I'm not concerned about it, because you know what? I've watched you work, and I've watched you do this on the East Coast more than once now. And I've seen you show up every single time for each other. And it may not feel like that every single day when you're rushing in a New York subway or you're driving down the road, but you do. In times of trouble, you do. The churches show up. It's the people that get us out of this mess. They build homes. They get together and they rebuild homes. They repair homes. They get electricity back on. Electricians, plumbers, disaster relief companies, the ones that used to take contracts from FEMA and the government never got paid unless you were big name corporation, that they control. So honestly, if I hedge my bets, I'm hedging it on the people every single time. If I'm looking for someone who's got my back in a nationwide crisis, I'm going to depend on the people. It's the people every time. So I'm not that concerned about what the deep state is doing. I am not even concerned if they shut down the country. And quite frankly, I hope they do. It's only going to make us stronger. It's only going to unite humanity in a way that we've never seen before. And if what happens here happens all over the world, I can tell you right now, we can get this done. What are you going to do, patriots, when you see, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 100,000 Chinese soldiers showing up on U.S. soil? I know what you're going to do, and so do you. No question in my mind. Everybody owns a gun in America. Probably 10, some of you that are watching this report. And there's no doubt in my mind that you are going to take care of the American people like we should be. You're actually going to protect us. So I am definitely on your side, not their side. As for this dog and pony show at the United Nations, they're still waiting for contracts. They're still waiting for money. They'll just get a new face and put them up front and say, oh, look, we're going to have access to this on the next new moon, full moon, alignment with Uranus. Even if we're not giving out the information anymore, they've come to enjoy the circle that they're going around in. Part of the discussions that I overheard had to do with the lawyers in the law firm. that I told you that we were approached by that wanted to talk. Well, they really don't want to talk. They just want to force us to do what they want. And they feel by cutting the supply lines and all those things that they're going to force me into doing what they want. And I can tell you, I wish them all the best in trying to do that. Even if I gave them $100 billion or something, which I'm never going to do, you know, they're going to blow stuff up for a few days, maybe a few weeks, and small stuff because they don't have any nuclear weapon capability. No country does at the moment. And so that's it. And then they're going to be needing more money because they don't know what to do. And they don't have any trading capacity off ledger like they used to. All that was just a fantasy to keep them going around in circles now. And this has been going on for the last few months. But the one thing they have come to understand is the power behind the key intelligence and military system. They've come to understand the power of the key integrated monetary system 1 and 2. So do I expect to see more turmoil over the next 2 days? You know, these are the parts of the plans we've been aware of. The nuclear power plants are not going to blow. We're not going to have that kind of a nuclear fallout here in the States. Are they going to cut off some pipelines that they control? Possibly. Do we have other oil and gas companies that are smaller, that are not owned by the deep state? Yes. Do we have a way to pump heavy crude should we need to that doesn't involve steam? Yes, we do. We can get petrol, we can refine that petrol without their help. So, and I know they think they control it all. God bless Halliburton, Dick Cheney, and all the others that control the oil. Bush Sr. So speaking of control, I wanted to point out a couple of things that I found in my notes and some files and things that I had come across in the past that I thought you should know about. So number one, let's go back to BRICS for a moment here, because this ultimately is the goal. You know, they burn the United States to the ground, buy back everything at pennies on the dollar. It becomes communist just like China, and China runs the world. That's the plan. These American deep state generals that have quote unquote negotiated deals with these people to be the ones in charge are, you don't know who you're dealing with, do you? You don't realize that everybody lies to everybody. And moreover, in business, I can tell you right now, the Chinese deep state lie more than anyone I've ever met on the planet. That includes the Middle Eastern folks, and that even includes the Americans. At least the Americans, you know, can't help themselves but to tell you what they're going to do to you. You know, sitting down in a meeting saying, we're going to kill you, or, you're all going to die, everyone's going to die. God bless them all. But let's go back to BRICS for a second. So we've been hearing a lot of stuff in the news about BRICS, and that they're going to save the world and create a multipolar world. And I keep telling everybody that's actually not the case at all. There is no hope of this being a multipolar world. It's all about China's control of planet Earth. That's it. Bottom line, simple fact. They got the Japanese involved. They have promised the Japanese that they would have power. That is also a lie. That's never going to happen. They've promised the Germanic tribes, the Mormons, the Amish, and all the other folks that they were going to have control. That is a lie. That is not the case at all. Will they use them like a tool, like little slaves? Yes, they will. You need to take a look at who you're negotiating with, people. How about the crazy people in the Philippines that want to negotiate, that they've got all these bunkers, and you never get anything but some worthless pieces of paper, Anyway, I heard that the latest meeting with the lady there, what's her name, White Mummy or whatever her name is, that they've been negotiating with the Treasury Department, was abruptly canceled last night. Yeah, well, no bother. Just one less ridiculous conversation that I have to fast forward my way through. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit more about BRICS. Sounds like we talked about in the news that they were formed in 2009. Well, officially, and that's true. But this move over to the east has been going on for a long time. You've probably heard of the Asian Investment and Infrastructure Bank in Hong Kong. You know, that's when the Chinese elders were going to be the savior. And now we have the BRICS Bank that is proposing new digital currencies, which are never going to happen, that they think they're going to trade in worldwide. So the bank I think you probably never heard of, or I've maybe mentioned it once or twice, is a bank called the International Bank for Economic Cooperation. It was founded in 1963. It is still there. It's not really fully operational, but it is located in what is now called Russia. But it was founded at the time by the USSR. Also, the founding quote-unquote nations of this bank was Bulgaria, Hungary, East Germany, Mongolia, Poland, Romania, Czechoslovakia, and of course the Soviet Union. Later on, about a year or so later, after the bank was founded, Vietnam and Cuba joined. So the purpose of this bank was to counteract the Western run, as they say, World Bank. Now, I don't necessarily buy this, but there's some important facts that they need to understand. So when this bank was founded, my predecessor was in his position. My predecessor put up 100,000 metric tons of gold to support this new bank because it was part of his orders. It's not like they just thought of this great idea to counterbalance the West and create a new World Bank type scenario where people could trade in their own currencies and not US dollars. Does this all sound familiar? This was 1963. Does it sound as familiar as it does with the BRICS situation and their new currency? Why, yes, it does. So, as you can see, at that time, communism was running rampant throughout the USSR and, of course, all of their quote-unquote partner nations that they were courting to join this new institution. Of course, they had to dangle the carrot of loads of gold and lots of money to get everybody to join, which sounds awfully familiar. You know, it almost sounds like I'm talking about, well, now. You know, like I said, I'm all for a multipolar world. I am all for, you know, currencies eventually being run by the people of each country. I don't believe we should have a centralized point for that. I believe that so much so that the global repository is structured that way, at least the one that we run. You know, the fake one there in the Omega system might have said something different. Who knows? You know, maybe we got the BRICS involved, maybe we didn't. Maybe we got China involved and maybe we didn't. Maybe it changed on the daily as to who ran the fake global repository, which they were all salivating over like you wouldn't believe. But, you know, once they touch it, it pretty much disappears anyway. You know, but it keeps them busy and it allows me to get some sleep. So that's good news. You know, I got tired of being woken up all night long with real hacking, so let's create some fake mirrors so that they can enjoy themselves over there. But in reality, without the support of, and this is really important to understand, in reality, without the support of the funds and the gold and everything else that we now run, and I say pretty firmly we. Yes, I've been trying to free all that up for you, and I understand that. Yes, I understand everybody gets frustrated and feels like it's just another day ending in Y. But sometimes we need to look at this from a safety standpoint too. You know, and if you can trick your enemy into working for you without them knowing it, you know, isn't that great? I mean, there's a lot at play and a lot at stake. We needed to buy some time for the terraforming to continue. We needed to buy some time before we could completely cut off the hologram. Otherwise, people would have lost their mind when they saw what the world really looked like. And this gave us a perfect opportunity to do that. Um, so, um, everything that we do is really in your best interest. And without the support of us, the people, when they see the real global repository, you all own a piece of everything, and what I mean by ownership, you are the beneficiary of that. It generates the energy for you. It generates life force for you. It bleeds source life force throughout the planet and throughout you every single day. Eventually, it's going to bleed energy known as money directly to you. Are you going to be able to stack it up in bars and put it somewhere? No, because we needed it to directly connect to source, but it can back your currency of energy. And like it was always meant to do, like it was before the interruption of the AIs. But do understand that the AIs did serve a purpose. After a war, Earth was fully devastated. We needed a habitat to live in, and it created that for us. As bad as it was, and as rough as it's been, originally it was supposed to be balanced, both light and dark. If you remember, I worked with the alpha side for a long time. Things got out of hand and got out of control, but it's going back to reality and nature now, and hopefully, fingers crossed, by all indications, we're almost there. So anyway, is the BRICS going to be able to start their own currency without the help of the Office of the Currency of Curator, or us? No, they cannot. Are they going to be able to launch a quantum system? Nope, definitely not. Are we going to allow a changeover, a brutal changeover of world power? No, we are not. Are we going to stop these ridiculous generals? Yes, we are, because they don't even realize that we are actually helping them, as crazy as that sounds. So let's see what happens in the next 24 hours by high noon Eastern time tomorrow. Sounds like a gunfight, Wild Wild West, as America has become. Let's see if we have a shutdown of the U.S. government. I guess only time will tell. Let's see if they actually have a way to do it. Let's see if they continue with court closures. So stay tuned for Fridays, because it's going to be an interesting report. Let's see what happens in the next couple of days. So look forward to speaking to you then. Have a great night.